Hello, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Authoritas Tea Time SEO. Hope everyone's got their tea, coffee, or cake ready for today's session. We have this Tea Time SEO every day at 4 p.m., and we encourage everyone to take a break, connect with each other, and learn something new. I'm joined by Carrie Shepherd here from Authoritas, and I'm SEO Joe Blogs. And today we have got Jason Barnard, who will be hosting this session, and we've also got three great speakers who will be sharing their tips around log file analysis. So I'll pass over to Jason, who can introduce all the speakers.
Hey, thank you very much. Very happy to be here. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Carrie. Welcome to Tom, Julien, and Faisal. I'm going to be hosting today. I'm going to try and make it fun and interesting. From a point of view, for me at least, because when they said, "Oh, do you want to host log file analysis?" I said, "Not really my thing." And then they said, "Well, we'll let you use our alpha beta tool for analyzing logs." So I've just spent the last couple of days researching, studying logs, seeing how long it takes from submitting through Search Console to when Googlebot comes, how often BingBot comes, and I've suddenly got really interested in it. So I really want to know what these guys have got to say. So we're working from home, all of us, having a tea time, and I've got to figure out now how the slides work. Now we've got Tom, Poole, Faisal Anderson, and Julien Deneuville, which I'm trying to say with a very French accent because I'm now French. And I'll introduce them very quickly. Faisal, I'm here from LiveArea. Can you tell us a bit more about yourself? Because behind you it's a bit blank and we couldn't find anything incredibly interesting just from looking at your background. What can you tell us about your background without?
Yeah, I haven't prepared my background correctly, unlike you. I like the books. Yeah, so I am a technical SEO, a company called LiveArea, oversee SEO operations across EMEA, so Europe, Middle East, and Africa. LiveArea do end-to-end e-commerce, so everything from fulfillment right through their digital arm, which is LiveArea, owned by a parent company called PFS Web. So I kind of had this really interesting role of being both agency and also almost in-house, I guess, from an SEO perspective. So I get to work with some really cool global e-commerce brands. I get to do a lot of fun stuff with Python and technical SEO. It's a bit cliche now, I guess, to say you love Python as a technical SEO, but it helps me out in my job every day, including log file analysis, which we'll talk about in a bit. And outside of that, obviously, I do speaking, do some training, and I sort of a Moz contributor, had one post up on there, one scheduled. So yeah, that's all about me.
Brilliant stuff. That sounds really interesting. Now, Tom Poole, never met you before. All I know about you is you have the brilliant idea of putting the Twitter icon at the bottom because you have a blue shirt. Is that all I need to know about you?
That's basically it. But I'm the, yeah, that's all you need to know. Next slide, I guess. No, I'm the technical SEO director at BlueArray, and I look after the sort of technical output of the agency. We look after a number of different sort of brands and stuff, and I just get to look over all the technical side of things. Absolutely love it. Speaking, training on all things SEO, especially tech SEO, as Faisal said. Python as well is a massive interest of mine. I know it's a cliche, but it's really cool. And as this is a tea time chat, I don't actually drink tea or coffee, but cake is really, really good. So I'll be having some of that.
Okay, well, I didn't know that Python was a cliche. Now I do. So Julien, who is the only person I've actually met from this trio before, is now going to tell me he loves Python too. Lovely to see you again, Julien. I saw you at SEO Camp last year, I think. Keep meeting up at SEO Camp. Tell us about yourself and your bikes.
Yeah, so as you can see, I've got a lot of bikes, some just behind me. I've been working in SEO in France for nearly 10 years now. As you can hear, I've got quite an accent. And as Tom, I don't drink a lot of tea. I live in Reims, which is one of the big towns in Champagne in France. So I drink champagne.
Brilliant stuff. That's a great drink as well. I used to play gigs in Reims quite a lot in the 90s when I was playing the double bass in my band. We used to come to Reims. I don't think you were actually born, so I'll shut up about that now. Off we go with the top tips from Faisal. I'll let you take over, man.
Great. So yeah, I'm just going to be going over sort of 3 sort of key tips I guess I could give. So communicating what data you need clearly. Actually, I think probably the bit I'm sure you guys agree, one of the biggest challenges of log file analysis is not actually the analysis itself, it's getting the log files and getting them correctly. So we'll talk a bit about that. Taking more of a structured approach to log file analysis. So this part of an audit, whether you're diagnosing a specific problem, I find it easier to have a specific framework to work around when diagnosing specific issues. So we'll go over how I approach that. And then also using automation and data visualization, not just for the sake of making things faster, but also to demonstrate a clear ROI to either clients or senior stakeholders, which I think is one of the most important things we have to do as tech SEOs, is get stakeholder buy-in. So come next slide, please. So yeah, understanding your client setup. So depending on the server configuration of your client, log files are going to be in different places. And this is something you've really got to think about if you're dealing especially with clients that are working in many different markets, lots of different servers. And that's not what you have to worry about as well, unfortunately. You have to think about things like load balancing. So one configuration that you have with servers and hosting your website is that traffic can be split among a pool of servers to reduce the pressure on one particular server, and also it can be more cost effective sometimes. So your logs are going to be spread across those different servers. Then you've also got to think about a content delivery network and whether logs are being stored elsewhere because of that, being stored on the edge. So you've got to think about those things. And then also when you get your logs, you've also got to know the host name. Have you got the correct protocol? You might be getting requests being made to the HTTP version, the insecure version of your URLs as opposed to your secure ones. So all of this needs to be considered. So personally, what I would say is, sorry, before you jump on that, but I would say like formulating a structured email to go, if you're working agency side, especially, you may not have as many access to key stakeholders in the business. Formulating an email that explains all of this and says, hey, we need to be talking with the person that knows about this stuff. That tends to get you to the person you need to talk to pretty quickly. If you're in-house or if you're in sort of in-house agency style agency like myself, it's more about trying to find the right person in the company and approaching them directly. So just make sure you understand what you're talking about before you approach them and know exactly what you want and where to get it. Because some developers don't understand log files necessarily. Even some server admins aren't as familiar with it from an SEO perspective. Next slide, please. So tip 2, I'd say, is take more of a structured approach. If you're trying to diagnose a specific problem, you're not sure where to start and it's not really part of a main audit, sometimes it's good just to have a bit of a procedure of working with it. I find with log file analysis, it's normally very situation dependent. But if you're doing like more of a general audit, or as I said, you don't know the circumstances with this particular problem, I like to break things down in sort of 3 sections. So analyzing crawl behavior. So that could be looking at the most least crawled URLs, which is really valuable for, say, seeing whether PLP on an e-commerce site is getting crawled enough, or a new site is being crawled enough, is the right content being crawled enough. Looking at things like crawl frequency by depth and internal links, that can also be a valuable way of looking at crawl behavior. So basically just looking at how Google and other search engines crawling your site. Then there's crawl budget waste, looking at things like parameters that shouldn't be being crawled. So for example, internal search, maybe getting lots of requests there. Even at crawl spaces, that sort of thing. That's why we're looking at crawl budget waste, because with large sites especially, it really matters how your crawl budget is being utilized. And then the last thing is site health, which I think is sort of overlooked a lot. But basically just looking at how your website responds to crawling. There's some cases where you get things like inconsistent server responses where your site's being crawled, and then sometimes when it's being crawled too much, it starts causing 503 errors. And one way you can find this out with log files is looking at, over time, how does your website respond? What status codes are you responding with? Are the pages they're responding with 200s one day, responding with another status code another day? It's a really valuable thing to look at. And then I guess finally, look at using the right tool for the job. Very rarely I'll use Excel, but Excel can be really good for very minor data sets. I use that maybe once in a blue moon. But the one thing that I commonly use is a Screaming Frog log file analyzer, which is quite good. And then Jupyter and Python is amazing for larger data sets, because Screaming Frog log file analyzer can handle large stuff. But if you're wanting to automate a lot of things and create a lot of data visualizations, I'd say Jupyter and Python is the way to go. Next slide, please. Yeah, and I think the one thing that's really amazing with log file analysis is it's quite accurate normally data if you've gotten things correctly from your administrators. If you're trying to get stakeholder buy-in for something, we need to be making it clear what exactly we're doing. Because if we're just talking about log file analysis and really abstract concepts, stakeholders, it's just going to glaze over them. They don't really care about that. But if I can actually demonstrate with a graph saying, okay, well, some of your content is not being discovered because it's a too high of a crawl depth, or you've got index bloat because these parameterized URLs are being indexed. I can actually show you this is what's happening. And I can show you that if you fix this, we're going to get a boost in traffic, or we're going to improve X, Y, and Z. And that can be quite difficult as an SEO, but I would say a big tip is if you can use case studies from your other clients, if you don't have something that has a definite result. So for example, index bloat is a good example. If you have another client where you've sorted that issue out, you can say, well, we did this for our other client and that caused a boost. You can use other case studies online. Obviously, if you have a good relationship with the client, you don't want to be showing another agency's work, but that can be one way of doing it. So just making sure that you have something that leads to a clear result. And I think with log file analysis, it's no different to the other part of SEO. We need to really demonstrate a clear ROI. I've also got a link there, but you can go to bit.ly/ hold on, let me double check that. bit.ly/log-file-python. You can get some scripts that automatically generate these sort of reports that you can use. And that's one good thing about Python is we can create data visualizations pretty quickly. Another quick tip was to use the Seaborn library. So Python has matplotlib, which does these data visualizations, but they look quite ugly, whereas Seaborn makes them look quite pretty and you have more customization on the visuals themselves. And yeah, I guess that's my top 3 tips.
Sorry, I'd muted myself. Tom, brilliant stuff. That was great. I love that. Sorry, I was thinking that graph did look very pretty. I think Seaborn is the best graph drawing tool I've seen all afternoon. Tom, I'll leave it with you now. I'm sorry.
Awesome. Yeah, Faisal, I really like that actually, especially that last point. Little Python and stuff. I'm slowly getting more and more into that, and it's really, really cool. But yeah, so I sort of took a little bit of a different approach to this, but there are like sort of 4.5-ish sort of tips I'm going to share. So first one is how sort of like wasting crawl budget, like the stuff you should really be looking for when you're analyzing log files. You want to make sure you're looking at real Googlebot data versus pretend Googlebots. You want to be also combining crawl data that you get from sort of Screaming Frog, if you're using that, with logs to sort of really supercharge your insights. You want to be comparing the 2 data sets against each other. And then, yeah, referrer data as well can be an absolute goldmine if your logs are set up to capture this. And there's a little bonus one at the end. I thought, yeah, add the cliche in there, why not? With the Python utilizing pandas as well, which we will go over shortly. So going on to the first tip is the crawl budget waste. So this is where you're looking for sort of duplicate content. I think you touched on this, Faisal, about parameterization, where there could be like, for example, a form on every single page of your site is accessed through a parameter, and then Google could potentially be crawling that same form 1 million times if you've got 1 million pages. And you really want to sort of look for that sort of issue. Other sort of weird things causing duplication of content. You want to look into sort of most and least crawled URLs. You want to investigate them. Why are these URLs being crawled the most or being crawled the least? Is there maybe some sort of waste that is occurring in there that you can't really sort of see through crawling in the traditional sense? And then you can sort of like consider linking from the most linked pages more to the less crawled. So like if you've got a page that's being crawled 1 million times by Googlebot, they obviously see that as a really important page to them. And you can maybe consider linking to pages that aren't being crawled as much. I mean, you kind of want to make sure that it makes sense to link between these pages. You don't really want to link from your most popular page to a terms and conditions page for a really, really obscure service. You maybe want to link to like another sort of product page or something that makes sense to not just a bot, but to a user as well. The second tip is making sure you're working with real Googlebot data rather than fake Googlebots. You want to make sure that the logs you're looking at have been verified. I think Screaming Frog's log file analyzer, if you analyze logs that way, allow you to verify bots to make sure that they are actually who they say they are. I think they do this via like a reverse IP lookup, maybe. But I've personally been guilty as crawling as Googlebot. Hey, I want to see what Googlebot sees, right? So I'm going to crawl a site as Googlebot and see what happens. But then you've got a problem there where you're going to potentially have some fake data in your log. It's not going to be the real live Googlebot. So you do not want to make assumptions based on fake data. You want to actually make sure it's the real stuff before you sort of make assumptions and make recommendations based off of those. So the third tip is, combining crawl data with logs. This is probably like one of the most important things that you can do. It's all very well seeing crawl data and then seeing log data, but you really want to sort of blend them together to get like a sort of more combined view. Although URLs maybe that are found in one data set that aren't found in the other, why? It sort of leads to like a more deeper investigation. Does sort of internal linking found in the crawl match up with that log data? I've seen a few instances where the pages that are crawled most by Googlebot really reflect the sort of information architecture of a site. So if you look through the header navigation of this particular site, you can see it links to like a number of different products, and those products actually crawl more by Googlebot versus the ones that aren't linked in the header navigation. And it can really offer like some sort of, it's like a use case. You know, you can provide this to internal stakeholders saying, hey, link to these most popular pages from your header navigation. Google going to crawl them more, you're going to sell more, you're going to make more money. And that's a pretty good argument there. So tip 4, referral data, absolute goldmine if your logs are set up. So if you can set it up, do it. You can see sort of where requests come from, ID sort of like popular entry and exit pages, which site sends you the most referral traffic, all sorts of other really awesome things. And it's not just bots as well. You can get user data, so you can see exactly what your user sort of, I guess your funnel is through your site. Combine that with analytics data. It's really, really cool stuff. And then the final half tip, I guess, is just investigate. Like investigate as much as possible into your logs. And then once you think you're done, go back over it and check it again and check to see if there's anything you've missed, because I can guarantee there probably will be. And you really want to utilize sort of all tools that are at your disposal. Personal favorite is pandas with Python, sort of for data manipulation. Really, really works with massive files. And use that in conjunction with Jupyter notebooks, and you're on for a winner.
Brilliant stuff, Tom. Thank you. It sounded a bit like a rabbit hole that one would go into and get lost in. And then at the end, it looked even more like a rabbit hole when you said investigate again and again and again. Yeah. So I'm not going to do that, but I'm going to let Julien give his tips for the day.
Yeah. First, I'd like to say that I loved the tips from Tom and Faisal. In fact, when we were preparing this talk, I thought that I could have given the same tips, so I had to think a little bit harder to find some other tips. But I'll try to give you something new. My first tip is, like Tom and Faisal just said, to check your data. There are a lot of ways to get log data, but it's often not good enough for analysis, so check that. The main point I'd like to talk about is the monitoring tool that logs can be. It's a great tool for auditing and analyzing just a go, but using logs daily or weekly and just checking that your website is healthy is very important, especially if you work on big websites. Work with others because they also have data. They also have learnings to get from your analysis, and they can help you pay for tools, pay for the time of analysis. And at the end, I'll show you a custom KPI I use a lot to quickly analyze a website. So the first tip is reliable data. First of all, I always ask my clients to send me a sample of log files just to check if there are all the required fields, especially when working on some custom web servers and so on. You often see that some fields are missing, so it's quite a waste of time, because you have to wait for a few days, a few months before getting reliable data. So first of all, just check the fields in your files, and secondly, as Faisal just said, check that the volume of data you've got is what you expect when comparing with, for example, Google Search Console. On the old Search Console, you've got a graph of crawl for each day in the last 90 days, I think. So just compare this with the data you've got and see if the volume are likely to be okay or not. That's it for this one. The second tip is monitoring with the logs. There are a lot of tools that can help you monitoring logs, not just for SEO. For SEO, I love to use OnCrawl, which is a French tool, but available worldwide. It's great because daily you will send them your logs, and you'll get a report about any KPI you want, and mostly about crawl errors. Did Google see wrong URLs on your website yesterday? Crawl per page type. So are your product pages well crawled? Are your new products crawled and indexed? And you can also compare a lot of other things. For example, before the switching to the mobile first indexing, I used the user agent in the logs to check if my clients' websites were more mobile or more desktop crawled. So if Jason just clicks, there is a graph exactly. A quick example here, I had to mask a part of the graph, but you've got here a capture from OnCrawl. So we've got crawl rate for each category of page on the website, and you can see between the fifth and the fourth and the fifth week, we just did a migration of the website. So I used this to check if Google had understood the migration and was crawling the new pages. And the idea was to have a minimum red crawl as possible. Be aware that Google crawls 301s and other redirects, so it's always important to double check your data, like Tom just said. But with a graph like this, I could daily just have a quick watch at the data and just be happy with my migration. Next tip, work with other teams. First of all, you need to work with IT to get the log data, so be nice to them. But you can also work with other people to share data, to share insights, to show them that your work is important, and also to share costs. I know a lot of places where SEO shares premium tool like OnCrawl with IT for monitoring or QA on any new release on the website. I also know of people who use tools such as Tableau or Click for log file analysis. Even though I'd prefer to use Python and Pandas, those tools are robust enough to ingest big volumes of data. So talk to people you work with and see if you can share some stuff with them. And the last tip is a custom KPI I love to use. It's simply a comparison between the number of Googlebot visits on a page and the number of real visits it will generate. The idea is to see quickly for each type of page on a website if the ratio is good enough or not. And on this graph, you can see that the tag category is not very good. So I'll double check this part of the website. With this kind of quick reporting graph, in fact, you can gain a lot of time when doing a log file analysis. This comes with experience, of course, but try to find the good KPIs to work with you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. That was amazing. Brilliant stuff. I know more about log file analysis and crawl budgets than I did before. Thank you, all three of you. We've got some questions. I had something that I wanted to say. As you were talking earlier on, I think it was you, Tom, about crawling multiple times the same form and ending up with 1 million different crawls of the same page. I did an interview for my podcast with Fabrice Canal, who's a French guy who's king of Bingbot, or Mr. Bingbot, depending on what you want to call him. And he was saying calendars are one of the big problems they have. Calendars throw boatloads of links that they have to follow, and that's a really big problem. He also said they found 70 billion pages every day that they've URLs, sorry, that they've never seen before. 70 billion every day. That's amazing.
That's a fair few, yeah. I imagine Google's got an order of magnitude more than that, but
that's a challenge.
Not doing everything, so
sorry, just truth be told, Bingbot crawls a lot less than Googlebot.
I would have thought so, but I don't know. Do you have any opinions on this, Faisal, Julien?
I would say. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Julien.
Oh, thanks. In France, it's about 1/10. Bing crawls 1/10 of what Google does.
Oh, okay. Brilliant stuff. Faisal, do you have something?
Yeah, I'd say I'll be honest, I don't really monitor Bingbot much just because most of the clients I have aren't really in the right market. But I would say, like with Googlebot, one thing I've seen is that it's actually quite smart. So I remember there was a case where it was an infinite crawl space and Screenfrog, Guess Who's Spell, and other crawling tools were just going straight through it. But when I looked at the logs, like Googlebot was actually detecting it was a crawl space. So it only went like 1 or 2 steps and then would stop. And I thought that was fascinating. So it would be interesting to know, like with that particular case, how Googlebot would handle it versus Bingbot. Because I know I've seen cases where Bingbot is just not as smart. I'm not trying to insult Bing here, but it just wasn't as efficient. So, that'd be an interesting case study for sure.
Yeah, I think I'm probably a bit naive because Fabrice Canal is completely obsessed by the fact that Bingbot is incredibly intelligent, and he would definitely argue with you about that one. Listen to the
probably
podcast.
Be right then.
I mean, he's saying they're using enormous amounts of machine learning to get smarter and smarter and smarter, to crawl less and less, with the idea that they're saving resources, they're wasting less time, and his aim is to crawl less to get more. But I've got no particular opinion on that. We actually have some questions. Faisal, we have a question for you. Can you just use one tool to see log files? You mentioned Jupyter and Python and Excel and SF log file analyzer. Can you just get one tool and do it all, or do you have to have 4?
It depends on the situation. The only reason why I mentioned several is because it really depends what you're doing. Like I use the log file analyzer probably more than Python just because I'm looking at things, I'm doing recurring checks, or I'm doing something that's it's just a lot easier to do with like a GUI, to do with a graphical user interface. But like the great thing about Python is just that you'll see in some of the scripts I gave that it's just finding insights quickly, working with very big data sets and stuff. And also the thing with the log file analyzer is that you can't create your own sort of custom visualizations or reports the way that you want to. So I say it's situation dependent. You can totally just use the log file analyzer or the Authoritas tool or whatever you need to use. They didn't pay me for that plug, just saying. So you can use whatever you need to use. It's just whatever gets the job done. So if you just want one thing, then absolutely, like, just use one.
Brilliant. Oh, and just to think about the Authoritas beta real-time log analysis. If anyone wants to give it a try, you just contact Authoritas and ask them, and they'll be nice and give you an access, which they did for me, and I did it in a very childish manner, but it was really interesting and useful, in fact. Sorry, that was one thing, is I'd never analysed my logs, and I actually sorted out 5 or 6 quite major problems with my site within the space of about an hour just by watching the bots, which was really cool. Question for Tom: how do you know what is a pretend Google bot?
Because it will tell you.
It introduces itself at the door.
Yeah, it's like, hi, I'm not really Googlebot, but I'm going to say I am, so can I come in? Effectively, it does do that. So Google have said that they crawl from a specific range of IP addresses. So you can do a thing called a reverse IP lookup, where you effectively, I think this is what Screaming Frog Log File Analyzer does, right? Is that it takes that IP address, sends it, checks with, I think it's a database of IPs that it checks with, is that a Googlebot IP? If it is, then it's verified. If it's not on that list, then it's a fake Googlebot. I think it's quite obvious if you look at it yourself and you're seeing, because Google have said they crawl from the US, I think. And if you see, identifying this Googlebot and they're coming from, I don't know, Basingstoke, it's probably not Googlebot. Or like, yeah, they do tell you. You've got to dig a little bit, but you can identify the fakes.
Brilliant stuff. Thank you. Julien, sorry.
Yeah, just to add a little tip, most of Google IPs begin with 66.249. So just filter IPs that are not like that, and you mostly get real Google bots.
Yeah, okay. That's somebody who looks at too many log files because he can remember the first 5 figures. It's like pi. You can remember the first 5 figures of Google bots' IP addresses. Brilliant stuff, Julia. A question for you then. Somebody's asking how many Google bot hits did they need for each SEO visit? I mean, obviously that was a specific case. Do you have any general ideas about that? What we should be looking for?
Yeah, that's quite specific. On some websites, like the one I just showed, we were happy with 2 hits before 1 visit for each page. On some of the websites, it's a lot quicker. Nearly with 1 hit, you can get a visit just very, very quickly. And some others that are not really good websites, in fact, it takes a lot more of visits. It's really something that's specific to each site. It's quite quick to calculate that. So just check for any website which is below or above average, and check what works well and what doesn't.
Okay, brilliant stuff. One test I did with the Authoritas API was I looked at pages that I knew were newly indexed, or I created them, and Googlebot visited it on its own without me prompting it 3 times in 24 hours, but it didn't appear in the index at all, even when I searched something very specific. Then I submitted it through Search Console. Google Desktop Bot came, then the mobile one a couple of seconds later, which seems to happen every time you submit through Search Console. And it was in the index and showing properly for the queries around it within 5 minutes. So what I was saying was that Google discovers it itself and pretty much ignores the page from the results, at least. And as soon as I explicitly say, I want you to look at this, then it comes in and looks at it. Anybody got experience with that? Because I'm intrigued now. Anybody?
Well,
or have I just asked a question that doesn't have an answer?
I mean, I don't know.
Well,
go
on, Faisal. Go on.
No, I was just going to say it sounds. It just sounds interesting. Like I've seen it with. I actually used to work with Tom, and we saw a case where this client site had reverted from mobile-based indexing to desktop, and the actual bot had changed which was really surprising. So yeah, you can see all sorts of different eventful things with how Google crawls and indexes stuff depending on the content type and where it's situated and whatnot.
Yeah, okay. I mean, basically, I was just watching the logs, and you end up doing really bizarre tests because you get kind of obsessed about cause and effect between things. I mean, I tested a dozen pages and it worked every time, but only a dozen, so it's not like a major scale. And also, as Julien said, my site might just be crap, in which case Google just doesn't like my pages. Another question for you, Faisal. Sorry. And the last question on the list is, how often should you analyze your log files? Now, I think that's a very open question that probably doesn't have an answer.
Yeah, I'd say so. It really, again, it depends on your needs. Like if you're working with, I have some clients where it's quite an ever-changing website, quite a large-scale website. It might be worth reviewing it quite frequently. It may be the case where you're just using it a one-off. So like migration work is a fantastic example of that. If you're wanting to see whether your 3-1 redirects have been properly implemented and there's no internal linking, rather than just crawling like this humongous site which will take ages, look at the log files, see if there's still 3-1s being crawled, and to test whether your 3-1's actually being followed by Googlebot. That's a fantastic one-off case, but then you may not look at log files again for that client. So it really depends.
Oh, I love the site migration that Julien showed earlier on. I love that idea. I'm gonna use that because it's brilliant. I now feel like I've been doing these site migrations pretty much blind, which is a bit stupid. But my clients will be very happy because I'll get better at my job. Thank you very much, Faisal, Julien, and Tom. That was absolutely amazing. That was really interesting. I loved it, and I'm going to pass over to Jo now because she's going to tell us all about Google for Jobs.
You're muted.
Technicality there. Technical issue. I just want to say thanks very much to our host, Jason, for being with us today. And merci beaucoup. Thank you very much to Julien, Faisal, and Tom as well. And yes, as Jason said, so tomorrow we have Google for Jobs. So Friday is the bank holiday in the UK and in France. So tomorrow we have Marco Bonomo and Matt Hunt talking, and please bring your tea and cake ready or coffee for tomorrow's Tea Time SEO. And if you do want to talk, please reach out to Carrie Shepherd, and you can set up a time to be on the stage with us, or we might even have another host like Jason talking.
Yeah, I love doing this. It's right good fun because I get to do the research, meet new people, and learn new things. What more could you ask from life?
Yes. Will you be on next Thursday?
Oh, yeah. Good point. Anyway, thank you, Jo. Thank you, Carrie. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Faisal. Thank you, Julien.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to our audience as well.
Oh, very good point. Bye-bye.
Merci beaucoup, everyone. Thank you.